In Mccrackins Corner with Chuck Little. How you doing today, Chuck?
How's it going out there, planet Earth?
So, Chuck, I want to talk to you about your history in music. What got you involved originally in music?
To go back to the beginning, eighth grade graduation, I wanted a drum set. So from that...
Now, did you play music prior to that?
No, not really. So I actually started to learn how to play drums using the cardboard spindles from a coat hanger.
Really?
On the ironing board.
Oh, really?
It made like a snare sound.
Sure.
And so those are my drumsticks. And probably for a couple of years, I played drums on an ironing board, just to kind of learn some chops. My neighbor next door was older. He had a drum set, and I used to stare in his window and just dream about having a drum set.
When was this? What era was this from?
Late 60s.
Late 60s?
Yeah, mid 60s. And so I kind of dreamed about having drums. So 8th grade graduation, we had a family party, and everybody, chips in a few bucks and gives you an envelope. And I went and bought my first drum set.
Now, did you want to get into drums because you were inspired by a band at that time?
Well,
or
probably the Beatles.
The Beatles?
Yes, yeah, it was right when the Beatles, Beatlemania. And every kid on the block wanted to be in a band. So drums were my thing. Started to put a band together, and...
So were you banging away in the bedroom or the basement? Or
Basement at our house in Glendale Heights. And we put a band together. The first band I was in was called the Insects, I-N-S-E-X. Kind of a takeoff. I mean, there was the Beatles and all these other bug names going around.
And what kind of music did you play?
Classic rock, Motown, some Beatles.
Did you play in the schools or?
Yeah, we parlayed that into, we rehearsed. Insects lasted about a year, the name, and then we became the Hot Ice. And
did you stay on drums at that point?
I was on drums.
Okay. Did you ever move over to keyboards or?
No. I was a drummer, from day one.
Okay.
And the Insects became the Hot Ice, and when we became the Hot Ice in high school, we added a trumpet and a saxophone.
How'd you come up with that name, Hot Ice?
I don't know. I tell you the truth, I don't know how we did. I thought it was
kind of a neat name.
I thought it was a pretty cool name. Yeah, I thought it was a pretty cool name back in the day. And in high school, back then I followed some of the famous Chicago bands like the Buckinghams, Mods, of course CTA Chicago. And back in our high school days, we tried to dress real sharp. We had jackets on and ties and tried to be cooler than we were. But we were one of the few horn bands, as far as teenage horn bands.
Okay.
So then we started getting into Chicago, Motown, that kind of stuff, horn driven.
How many people played horns in your band?
Well, back then it was just a trumpet and sax.
You had four guys. You had yourself, a lead guitarist, and then a couple horns.
Yeah, we had a 4-piece rhythm section, so drums, bass, guitar, keyboard, lead singer, who eventually would be my first partner in the Blues Brothers as Jake Blues.
Okay.
Playing school dances, when you're kids, it's hard to play anyplace else because you're not an adult. We did a few clubs. We warmed up for some other bands and some of the teen dance places. And graduated high school, and I was going to actually go to Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, and I did. And I was only in college 2 weeks, and unfortunately, it all turned out better later. But at the time,
did you go to college for music or
no, actually,
something else?
I was going to major in business.
Oh, in business. Okay.
But I was only in college 2 weeks.
Okay.
My dad ended up getting hit by a pickup truck. He was walking. He was a truck driver, and he was near St. Louis walking to a diner with a fellow truck driver, and a guy that was drunk in a pickup truck hit him at about 50 miles an hour.
Yes.
He was in the hospital for a year. As soon as he ended up in the hospital, my family couldn't afford to keep me in college. So I quit college. The company he worked for gave me a job as a janitor just to give me a job.
Mm-hmm.
So we had some money. So I went from being the first person in my family to go to college. All of a sudden now I'm pushing a broom and cleaning toilets.
And what are you doing musically at this time? Is it on hiatus at this point?
It was, because everybody after high school, everybody else had dispersed and either gone away to college someplace. So my musicians, the whole network had just kind of filtered away.
Okay. So what time? Where are we at? I mean,
early 70s.
Early 70s.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I pushed the broom for 2 years, dreaming about what I was going to do later on with my life. And quit that and took a job at Motorola, and then started to play in bands again, little trios. And
so you started getting, so you just went out there as a drummer and you started playing with other bands?
Exactly. I started auditioning. And
where were we?
We're still like mid-70s.
Okay, so this is all like in the 70s
Yeah.
area. Okay.
Mid-70s. So yeah, I was working full-time, recently married, had a baby, working 2 jobs, and working full-time job, and then sometimes 5-6 days a week playing in a nightclub till sometimes 3 in the morning. I mean, I remember one instance, because I was burning the candle at both ends, of literally falling asleep on the drum set in the middle of a song. At the time, we lived in Carroll Stream. I was working in Schaumburg at Motorola, and I was working 6 nights a week till 3 in the morning at a nightclub in Calumet City. So I was driving and driving. So it was just too much. But I literally fell off the drums one time in the middle of a song, and I remember kind of waking up as I hit the ground, and the band was still playing, and from the ground I was still trying to keep the beat. It was
That's dedication, baby.
It,
Now, let me ask you this. Up to this point, were you ever a vocalist?
No.
You didn't do vocals?
No, I did some backup,
Uh-huh.
but I was never a front man or never a vocalist.
Okay, did you have the ambition or the inclination to want to do that?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Because I hadn't had a taste of it.
Okay.
And hadn't had a taste of it. So.
Okay, so right now you're just kind of sitting in the back, you're playing the drums,
Yeah, and I'm having a good time playing the drums. I'm an
Okay.
excellent drummer. I'm playing some cool stuff. I hooked up with
Well,
this.
I'm just trying to get a feel of where we're at,
Exactly.
as far as
So,
the progression.
End of the 70s, I'm with this Elvis impersonator, and I'm still working full time, and we're doing some gigs, and it was fun playing that kind of music. I had the huge drum set, like the double basses and 12 tom-toms, and did all that stuff. And then I joined another band, kind of a classic rock cover band.
What were they called?
Coda, C-O-D-A.
Coda?
Yeah, I'm still friends with some of those guys, but and we were a really good band. I was with them a year and a half, 2 years, and what ended up happening is that for whatever reason, it just didn't work out, and they decided to go with another drummer. Replaced me.
I see.
And it turned out it was probably a bad move for them because they only lasted a few more months after they replaced me.
Oh, I see. And then dissipate.
I was kind of the guy that was involved in bookings and the business part of all the bands I was in.
Okay, so you're playing the drums, but you're also doing the administrative part.
Exactly.
I see. So then what happens?
So I get a bad taste in my mouth for music, and I end up selling all my equipment. And I didn't play drums for 6-7 years. Now we're in the early 90s. And my high school buddy, who was my brother-in-law, who was my first lead singer in high school with Hot Ice, we were going to go to a Halloween party, and we didn't know what kind of costumes we were going to have or whatever else. So I said to him, listen, I have some cassette tapes, backing tracks that have, Soul Man, Give Me Some Lovin'. I said, how about we find a couple of black suits and go as the Blues Brothers, and since you can sing, maybe we could entertain our friends at the party and kind of do a little show. So that's what we did. We went to a Halloween party, dressed as the Blues Brothers, performed maybe 2-3 songs, did the vocals live.
Okay.
I would press the button on the cassette deck. Anyway, our friends went crazy for it. What we did then is the two of us traveled around to some karaoke bars as the Blues Brothers and tried our shtick in front of strangers to see if it was working.
Mm-hmm.
And people were digging it. So then I went and put some promo together, sent it out to some agents and some festivals, and during the next 2 years, just the two of us with a cassette deck would sometimes be entertaining at a festival in front of 10,000 people. It was kind of ridiculous because I'd be in front of these thousands of people, and behind me was just
no band.
No band. There was a TV table with a cassette deck with a cord from the cassette deck into the big PA system.
Yeah.
And I would say in our next song, and I would turn around. Even though the crowds were digging it, I mean, it sounded cool.
Yeah.
But visually, it was just the two of us. But what ended up happening, because it was just the two of us, we were always put in that slot, between bands. Oh, let's put these guys in there while the bands are setting up behind them. And we weren't really getting the respect, I thought. So now we're in the early 90s. And I said to after doing a two-man for 2 years, I said to my partner, I said, John, we should try to put a band together behind us, So I opened up an entertainment magazine called Illinois Entertainer, and I happened to look at the want ads, and in the want ads it said, somebody had put an ad in the want ad looking for a Jake and Elwood to start a Blues Brothers band.
Wow, what a fit, huh?
Yeah, so I called this guy, but they had a horn band. They did Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Chicago, Blues Brothers music, but they didn't have any singers.
So it was just all instrumental.
Yeah, and they said, we need to get some singers. At the very same time, we said, we need to get a band.
Sure.
So I got lucky. I saw this ad. I called the guy.
Karma. Wow.
And I said to him, I said, listen, I said, the two of us are playing in St. Charles tonight at a nightclub. I said, come out and see us. So they came out. I got the cassette deck and the sound system. We do our little shtick. The next day, my partner and I drove down to Joliet where they had rehearsal. And we basically rehearsed with this band.
Wow, that's pretty
And
interesting.
that was basically like 1992.
And then you guys actually start working together?
Yeah.
How long did you guys work together? I mean, the initial band before, I mean, obviously you went different directions at some point, no?
That's when the Blues Brothers started,
When you started the Blues Brothers.
in 1992.
So what were they calling themselves when they were just doing instrumental?
They called themselves I-55 because they traveled up and down Interstate 55.
So were you trying to emulate what Jake and Elwood were doing in the movie
Exactly.
on stage for what you're doing now?
Exactly.
Okay.
We kind of learned the crazy dance steps, the moves, some of the shtick, got the bluesmobile.
In 92, here's the birth of the Blues Brothers.
Exactly.
Okay, got it.
So now we're in Joliet rehearsing, and I'm thinking, hey, we need to shoot some promo to start booking jobs. The prison where they filmed the Blues Brothers movie was right down the street, and at that time it was still an active, open prison.
Joliet.
It's the old Joliet prison. So I called the office over there, and after 2 or 3 phone calls, I got a hold of the warden. I introduced myself, said we're in a Blues Brothers tribute, Belushi Acquitted. He goes, of course. He goes, yeah, the movie was filmed here, the intro. And I go, yeah, I know all that. I go, but here's what we want to do. I said, tomorrow we want to come over with the Bluesmobile and the band, not on your grounds, but we'll be across the street from your main gate where they started the Blues Brothers movie, and we want to use that as a backdrop for our promo. I said, I'm just giving you a courtesy call, just so you know we're coming. I go, we won't be on your property, we'll be across the street. He says, absolutely not.
Really?
He goes, it's a security breach. At that time, there was no Google Earth or internet. He goes, it's a security breach to have pictures of the prison walls from any angle, either video or still pictures. He goes, I don't care if you're across the street or a mile away, it's a security breach for you guys to take pictures of the prison walls, even as a background.
Well, that's crazy. Anybody could go down the street and take a picture. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous.
Well, but he warned us not to do it.
Okay, so
So I hang up the phone, and the band goes, what did he say? And I said, hey, we're good. I said, we're good.
you heard it wrong.
So I hung up the phone. I didn't tell him. So the next day, we're like commandos. I'm in the Bluesmobile, and I've got 3 cars full of musicians and a photographer I hired. We pull up in front of the main gate, brick wall, guard towers, the 2 guards up there with their machine guns. We pull out, I pull the Bluesmobile up, we jump out, the band lines up, we start click, 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 click pictures with the prison in the background. All of a sudden we hear the slow winding siren.
Sure.
I'm like, that's not good. These giant prison doors opened up, and these security cars come flying out and surrounded us.
But I mean, you're in a public street, though.
We're across the street from the prison,
Yeah.
a public street, but he warned us not to take any pictures.
Right.
The band doesn't know what's going on. They're freaking out. We're surrounded now by
And
security
you're
and
thinking
police.
you're busted.
So, initially they were going to arrest us, but they said, I'll tell you what, we're going to give you a slap on the wrist, but give us the film. So they took the photographer, they took the film out of his camera. So we drive about a mile away, and we're licking our wounds in a parking lot. We're kind of talking about what just happened. I said, that's a bummer. And the photographer goes, I switched to film. He goes, here's all the shots.
Oh, nice.
He goes, I gave him a blank roll. So we got the pictures.
So nothing they can do.
Yeah.
Smart.
And then years later, just this last summer, we actually played a gig at the prison. They
Yeah.
reopened the prison as a tourist destination.
Uh-huh.
They invited us to come headline the show. Story on stage.
Sure.
And right when I said, and we switched the film and we got the pictures, I said, and this goes out to you, Ward, and we played Jailhouse Rock. The crowd, there was like 3,000 people there. They went nuts. They really enjoyed the story. But, I mean, true story. We could have got arrested, but Yeah, our first promo right there at the prison.